Well, good morning. Among the significant events that have occurred here in Ukraine over the last 24 hours is a Russian airstrike on a Ukrainian army barracks in the city of Mykolaiv, where over 200 Ukrainian soldiers were reported to have been housed. Over 30 have been reported or confirmed to have been killed at this time. Mykolaiv has been the scene of significant Russian military operations in support of its campaign against the strategic city of Odessa. Also in Odessa, Russian naval forces have claimed to have fired for the first time in combat their vaunted hypersonic missile against port facilities there outside of Odessa. The Russian military also claims to have fired a land-based version of the hypersonic missile called the Dagger against a weapons storage facility in western Ukraine. Again, this marks the first time that this hypersonic missile has been fired by Russia in combat. Here in Kyiv, Russian military forces have been observed digging into the north and around the city, constructing defensive positions as their offensive has been halted at this point. This comes amid reports of Ukrainian army counterattack operations going on around Kyiv, while President Zelensky calls for immediate negotiations to end the war.
Jim, you're saying that they're starting to dig in around Kyiv. We've been hearing for over a week that a full frontal assault on the city was imminent. Does it seem as if they're stalled there and they're taking up those positions, and that offensive may not happen at this point?
Well, we have to consider what the Russian army has historically done. They've historically been in their offensive operations, been a steamroller that has gone on and then petered out and halted, and then they've had to regroup and take a significant amount of time to rebuild their supplies, regroup and prepare to move on after they've run out of steam. And that's what seems to at least be what's happening here. They're digging into defensive positions, they're trying to sort out their logistics, and they're trying to figure out what to do next. But again, what's significant is this comes amid the reports of Ukrainian army counterattacks that are taking effect against the Russians.
All right, Jim Lechner in Kyiv, Ukraine. Stay safe. Appreciate that report. All right, now let's go to the map here, and with the exception of those attacks out in the western part near Lviv, and also what Jim was talking about down with those attacks down in Mykolaiv, the Russian advance has been relatively static over the last 24 to 48 hours as we continue to get reports that the Russian army is having significant morale and supply issues. Let's zoom in here and take a look at the southeastern part of the country. Now, for the last week, we had anticipated that the Russians might really start moving west into Odessa. That hasn't happened on the ground, but it could be happening now from the Black Sea. Perhaps that's because of some of the operational issues that we've seen with the forces on the ground there. Let's take a look at the territorial waters pre-war, and you look and you see how much of that was controlled by the Ukrainians. And now take a look at how much the Russians control here. And you see why the Russians continue also to spend so much time focusing on Mariupol. Now the Russians control this entire area and this very key strait that accesses the key port city of Mariupol. They've significantly expanded their waters around Crimea. And so if this goes into some sort of a brokered settlement between the two countries, expect that control of the port of Mariupol and the strait is going to be a very key part of that negotiation for Russia. The big news over the last 48 hours, however, as Jim was saying, is on the Ukrainian side, because the Ukrainians have mounted what appears to be their first counterattack to reclaim territory taken by Russia in the city of Mykolaiv. Perhaps what we saw with that missile strike on the barracks is a direct response to that. Now, that offensive posture could be the result of receiving some of the equipment that the West has provided to the Ukrainians. As you know, last week, the Biden administration promised $800 million worth of new lethal aid, including some of the apparatus that you see here, the Javelin anti-armor system, the Stinger missiles, grenade launchers, and thousands of other pieces of small arm equipment, including drones. Now, the challenge, of course, is getting all of this to the front. Let's remember, Ukraine is the size of the state of Texas, and that resupply, especially when they don't have the air cover, is going to be incredibly challenging. It's also challenging for people heading in this direction, and those are the refugees. The UN now saying some 6.5 million have been displaced inside the country, with another nearly 4 million having escaped to other nations. So the big news of the last few days is that the offensive posture in Mykolaiv it shows that the Ukrainians really now are starting to try to reclaim territory that they have lost, and they continue to put up a very strong fight. Joining me now to discuss the latest on the ground in Ukraine is former Undersecretary of Defense and former Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Secretary Robert Wilke. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Tom.
Now, Biden talking tough to President Xi Jinping, threatening consequences for China assisting Russia. But the Chinese know of the track record of this president. Do you think that they're taking him seriously?
No. And you have just laid out the conditions on the ground succinctly, and I'll tell you why what you laid out is not frightening the Chinese. They have concluded that Biden is in a containment mode, that he is not in this to help the Ukrainians win. If he had been, you'd have seen a lot more drones going in. You would have seen the disbursement of MiG fighters and other anti-aircraft systems, particularly the ones in Eastern Europe, the SA-200, the SA-300, that our Eastern European friends got when the Soviet Union collapsed, that Ukrainians know how to use. He's not doing any of that. The other message that he would have been able to send had he been serious about this was to say, all right, if you continue along these lines, we are opening the pipeline to Japan, to the Philippines, to Vietnam, Australia. We will ring you with people who don't like you, who have thousand-year memories of Chinese imperial and communist aggression. And that changes the calculus in Beijing, but they've already made the mark of this president, and don't expect any change in Beijing's policy.
So the White House isn't going to discuss the nature of any consequences. They've repeatedly deflected on that. So give us a sense of what those consequences could really look like in a real sense here.
Well, it would have to be with financial sanctions, trade sanctions, using, again, the SWIFT system. Remember, the United States has the power of the world's reserve currency. We've had that since the end of World War II. We can make life very difficult for the Chinese. The one wild card in this is how we turn European unity into an anti-Chinese mission. That is really the great unknown in this. Will the Europeans, watching China's support for Russia, say, okay, you're next? And that changes the calculus incredibly, because the EU is the #1 trading partner with communist China.
That's right. Biden's moves this week were also happening with the backdrop of the Iran nuclear negotiations. You know, it seems to me that the administration doesn't quite understand that China, Russia, and Iran are not siloed. They operate to a great degree to reinforce each other. How much does Biden's pursuit of the Iran deal inhibit our ability to push back against any of these aggressors, particularly the Chinese?
Well, it's sheer lunacy. It's diplomacy for the sake of being performing art. Let's look at what's really happening here. Joe Biden is on the verge, if it hasn't happened already, of losing the Middle East, losing our Sunni allies, and soon losing the Israelis. The Saudis have entered into a military cooperation agreement with the Russians. The Israelis have entered into an economic cooperation agreement with the Russians. This defies all logic, and it's an agreement, as I know it now, that's actually worse than the one that President Trump canceled from the Obama-Biden administration. This will allow the Iranians to continue to fund terrorism, continue to build its ballistic missile program, and go on threatening our friends in the Middle East. So Biden is failing on multiple fronts.
Yeah, and while we have an energy crisis here, he wants to give them nuclear power. Okay, real quick, Mr. Secretary, the president is going to be heading to Brussels this week to confer with NATO leaders. What do you expect to come out of that meeting, or is it mostly window dressing?
Well, most of it is, but I do think that behind the doors, Boris Johnson and the president of France, and hopefully the chancellor of Germany, will be telling Joe Biden, you have to unleash armaments. You have to provide these people with everything that they can use. I think those are the messages that he will receive. If his track record proves true, he won't move, and it will be the status quo.
Secretary Robert Wilke, thank you for your analysis and your insights, sir. We always appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom.